Yeah. Anyway, I think like I promised that to live stream this to some other students, so there's a broader audience actually watching us on YouTube right now. So you better behave, Dallas. But anyway, like we'll go into that a little bit quickly. I'll introduce you like what the course is. This is actually our first day meeting up. So we'll go from there. The course is really actually 2 classes. It's sponsored by what I call basically our tech innovation program and our Sigma program. So let me just see if I can share my screen here. Can you see this? Yeah, perfect. So then like I'm welcoming 2 groups of students here. The GE490.1 is the innovation design capstone project. That's the 4th year class. So then these are our exiting place for entrepreneurship, and I'm welcoming the new semester of GE490 students who are coming in for the speaker series. This is the exploration stage. They're trying to find out career planning wise and entrepreneurship.
Cool.
So the beginning and the end of the journey, all in this one space. So a bit of housekeeping items. So welcome back, everyone. The course will be online for the basically next 2 weeks, and after that, I don't know yet. We'll see like what the college and university decide. But regardless, we'll carry on. It might impact the design class a little bit more than the speaker series. So for the design class, this is, as I mentioned, the student-driven entrepreneurship multidisciplinary design, and the students have already been working on building their product for the last 4 months, and then they will continue to work on that. Dallas, you will likely to see some teams from this cohort, hopefully. In fall, it was about like an hour and a half and 2 hours every night, like every week. We'll have an evening class focused on product definition and design. In winter, they will be mostly doing product building. But for the class, so now we are going into the guest speaker series. So then the course is actually going to be a little bit easier. You can sit back, listen to people from the ecosystem, different journey and different roles, and how that will all play together. It's going to be 1 hour each week. And for the design class, it's very important you understand that our final presentation will be on March 24th, because the college-wide design showcase, which is in Prairie Land on March 30th this year. So we need to pick a team to go to the college-wide competition. Work your time backwards, trying to figure out if you can get the demo work 1 week before the 24th. So I think that's the 17th. I'll ask you to do the product demo. So you will need to have a semi-working product ready by then. So you have about 8 to 10 weeks like to play around. Not a lot of time, but we trust like you can deliver. In the past, teams have done really good jobs. So housekeeping item, like this to-do list, 1 person from each team sign up for a meeting with me next week. We'll talk about like your assignments from the fall, and what's your plan and how we can support you. So do that. I'll post a link in Canvas. You can go from there. And then we have the innovation speaker series. So this is the exploration stage for those of you who are interested in entrepreneurship. I know there are a few of you are joining in on through YouTube. So I hope like our student center gets that process, and then you can come into the class in Zoom as well. The speakers are really from different stages. So Dallas today is from our tech incubator from Collab. I'll introduce you a little bit shortly, Dallas. And some of them are entrepreneurs, some of them are engineering managers. So then there are different career pathways you can take. We'll hopefully create a bit of awareness of what life look like after graduation, what you can do, and we will have people coming in to actually recruit for internships and like full-time engineer jobs periodically. I'll post them in Canvas. That's one of the benefits. Employers do like the students have entrepreneurial trainings, so you are on the front page to get those jobs. The course is very difficult because you have to come in and listen to all these 10 speakers talk, and by the end you need to submit an assignment. That's a 2-page reflection essay by the end of the course. I posted the rubric there. I hope that's not too cumbersome. I hope you enjoy. It's not really meant to be like just for the sake of work. I do believe there's a really good learning opportunity by writing down your reflection and then think about what are some action steps you can take in your own career. So I hope that's enough housekeeping item. If there's any questions, I'll just take a question. If you can raise your hands up virtually or turn your camera. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so I assume this is all clear and good. Feel free to message me if you have questions ongoing, and we can go from there. So today we have our very first guest speaker and a very important organization, and his role has been like definitely I think pivotal in terms of Saskatchewan tech scene. So Dallas first, he is the program manager out of Colab. If you're not familiar with that, that's the first tech incubator in Saskatchewan, and I think it's I would say like the best like in Young Province, and then definitely in your city, very close by. They are within walking distance to the building in College of Engineering. They host a lot of really good networking events. Past life I used to take students to, where they offer us pizza and beer. That will come back. So Dallas will tell you all about that, and he will also give a lecture on the marketing research and how, as a student, you can get started in your own journey. So I hope that's introduction does the justice. Anyway, like without overdue, Dallas, the virtual floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you, Tate. Appreciate the intro. That was more than nice enough. So appreciate that. I'm just going to share my screen and we'll get going here.
Yeah, for sure. While you share the screen, I think like I'll encourage our students, if you can, turn on your camera so then Dallas may be able to see you, and that builds a little bit more connection as well. And then like you can ask questions. For those who are listening on YouTube, you can text your question in. I will monitor in the chat and then lay over that to Dallas as well.
Yeah, I much prefer talking to human beings as opposed to black boxes with names in them. So if you're okay turning on your screen, I would really appreciate that. But yeah, kicking things off, I'm Dallas. I run programs and marketing here at Colabs. And what Colabs is we're a technology incubator. So our whole goal is to help grow the Saskatchewan tech ecosystem by helping people start, build, and scale technology companies. So a little bit on my presentation today. I'll probably not go the full 45 minutes, but I'll talk a little bit about me, because I like to talk about myself, a little bit about the ecosystem.
It does. I think we lost your sound.
Dallas, we can't hear you. Tate, I think he can't hear us too.
Okay, I'll message him.
So yeah, if you ever think you have to do what your major is in, I literally like logistics and supply chain. So don't worry about that. And then before this, I was out in Vancouver at a growth focused agency called Vertus Groups. And before that, I actually started my own branding agency where we worked with early stage startups. And now I get to run the programs and marketing here at Colabs. So a little bit on the ecosystem right now. The ecosystem, it's safe to say, is on fire. We've seen record number of venture capital raised kind of across the board. Vendastis secured almost $120 million, 7 shifts over 20, and Coconut Software 28 million. So this is pretty unprecedented for Saskatchewan, and it's pretty crazy to see that, you know, these companies that were pretty small only a couple of years ago are now kind of competing on a global scale for talent and expanding rapidly. So I think Colabs probably had a little bit of a role to do with that, but it's really just to show you that the ecosystem is growing like crazy, and anybody can build a tech company anywhere, especially in Saskatchewan. So a little bit on Colabs. Our whole role here is that we work with high potential and high performing founders to take their technology from an idea to $1 million in revenue. So at this $1 million in revenue mark, you're kind of at this point where you're ready to raise a Series A. You're probably like 30 to 50 people, and you're kind of scaling rapidly. And what's cool about Colabs is that we're an independent nonprofit, so we're entirely government and private business funded. So we actually don't take any fees or any equity. And basically, if you see any Colabs event kind of going on, they're all free. All of our programs are free as well. So a little bit on the metrics, so you know that we actually know what we're talking about. Colabs companies have generated $24 million in revenue. We've worked with almost 150 startups now. They've created over 450 jobs, and we're almost at that like 20 million in venture capital raised. So we're seeing a lot of growth in the ecosystem, especially at the early stages. A little bit on the programs here. The first 2 programs are really what's going to be applicable to you as a student. CoLearn is completely open to everyone. We actually have the CoLearn Founder Summit, which is all about the fundamentals of becoming a tech founder. That's actually on January 26th. I'll share some more information for that later, but we run 2 summits a year and a couple workshops as well. And that's all on the fundamentals of how do you go from interested in tech to being a part of the ecosystem. Then we have Colaunch, which we take 2 cohorts a year, one in September and then one now in January. That's a 16-week program. Now we're running through sales, marketing, market validation, how to build your product, how to recruit your team. And at the end of it, our startups pitch for $20,000 from a panel of judges. And then co-link and co-lead our residency program. So once you've worked through the co-launch program, you can become a part of those programs. That's where you get office space. We have weekly mentor office hours. We pay for experts and consultants to work with you. So those are companies that are probably over about 10K in annual revenue and are looking to scale pretty rapidly. So a little bit on my presentation. What am I talking about? So I'm going to really dive into founder mindset, but like I wanted to just start with like, what am I talking about when I even talk about tech? So there's really 2 functions of tech. You'll see software, which is going to be your Zoom, Uber, anything that's basically cloud-based on your phone or on your laptop. That's going to be your software components. And then you have hardware, that's electric vehicles, any sort of farming equipment, any actual device. I mean, your iPhone, again, is an example of that. And then you also have some companies that are hybrids, which have a piece of hardware that also use software on the back end as well. And then when we're just talking through different types of tech has really moved from this kind of small area, kind of working in like banking and high tech, and it's now really eating every part of industry across the world. So it's in education, it's in clean tech, there's fintech, ag tech. Even one of our companies works with funeral homes, so they're in the death tech portion of technology. So you really see that tech has really become a part of every industry in the world now. And this is one of my favorite quotes. It's from Mark Andreessen. He was the founder of Netscape, which was basically like the first browser. So before you had like Internet Explorer, you had Netscape. And now he's one of the most prominent venture capitalists. And what he said is that software is eating the world. So really what we're seeing is that software is touching every industry. I used to work in logistics, and logistics like 10 years before, everything was done in like filing cabinets and on paper, and now everything is software. And you almost look at every single industry, even medical. We have electronic medical records now, so there's no more filing cabinets. Software is literally touching every single industry across the world. So now I'm going to dive a little bit into the founder mindset of what it takes to actually build a technology company. So there's really this difference between ideas and problems. And we actually see this a lot with like first-time founders, is they more look at ideas. They're going through the world and they say, oh, this would be cool if this existed. That's really an idea. What you actually want to look for is not ideas, but problems. So you want to find areas in your life where you have a problem. You have something that's not working well. You see something and you say, this can be considerably better. These are problems, and problems is generally where all the money is made. And that really leads us to our next problem here, our next section here, the idea between vitamins and painkillers. So there's a saying that people will walk to pleasure, but they will run from pain. So what you'll always want to do is find the problem that is causing the most amount of pain, not something that will induce the most amount of pleasure. So you want your idea to be a painkiller, not a vitamin, because vitamins are nice to have, but painkillers are super important and super necessary. And this is one of my favorite books. It's called The Myth of Innovation. And it really dives into this whole idea of the founder mindset. There's kind of this misconception around building a startup or starting a company. And the idea is that like you look up to the heavens and a lightning bolt shoots down and it, strikes your key, and now you have the idea for electricity. There's kind of this idea that like, if an idea hasn't shot into your brain, that you weren't meant to be a founder. And really we see this is not true at all. Just because you haven't had a stroke of genius of what an idea is, doesn't mean you aren't going to be a founder or can't be a founder. What it means is that you just haven't worked enough through the world and thought enough about problems. If you look at most of the really successful founders in Colabs, they didn't have these stroke of genius ideas. They weren't prodigies. They didn't work for Google for a bunch of years. What they were is people who worked in an industry and ended up creating a solution out of that industry. One example is one of our top companies called Colaunch. They just hit the $1 million in annual revenue mark. They're scaling pretty rapidly. With them, their founder, Alicia Soulier, was a hairdresser. And what she realized is she thought it was really weird that with hair coloring, you just basically look at the length of the hair, and then you charge based off the coloring. But what they realized is that they never actually weigh how much hair coloring goes into coloring somebody's hair, and hair color is actually fairly expensive. It's actually more expensive on a per ounce basis than alcohol. So nobody would ever free pour alcohol, but people are free pouring hair color. So it really made no sense. So what she did is she created a Bluetooth scale, which then analyzed how much hair coloring was actually going into these hair coloring products or these hair coloring treatments, and figured out a better way to price. So that's an example of somebody who, they weren't just sitting around one day and came up with this idea for a product for salon tech. They were just in the salon industry, worked in there every day and thought through problems and came up with this problem. And that's really how founders come up with problems most of the time, is they're in an industry or they're observing something and they're in it and they're working through it day to day. And that's where problems generally come from. It's not this just like stroke of genius. And the best way to keep track of these ideas or to start thinking about these ideas anytime you're walking through the world, rather than just listening to music or being on your phone or, daydreaming, start thinking about like where you see different problems. So what's a situation where, let's say you're on your way to school one day, maybe you take the bus and the bus is never on time. Is there an idea for an app that can track the bus? Is the bus not overly appealing? Is there a way to make buses more appealing? Like there's all these different types of ideas that can happen. And the best way to keep track of these is to keep an idea journal. So some people have a physical idea journal. I just have a simple notes page that I keep in my phone. And every time I come up with an idea, I never used to write them down. I would always end up forgetting them. So now I actually keep track, and I got 15 or so ideas in there. So if you really want to come up with great ideas, this is a great way to keep track of these ideas and keep building on them over time. Because you might have something that starts out as like an okay idea, and then the more you think about it, the more you work on it, the more you keep coming back to that idea, you can reshape it and work it and create a great idea. And maybe you don't have an idea. Maybe you have no idea what you want to build. There's actually a bunch of resources now where people just give you ideas, and they crowdsource these ideas, and they want you to go build these ideas because they generally don't have the time to go do them. So there's a website called $1 Billion Startup Ideas. And at the end of my presentation, I have all these resources linked. So don't worry about writing these down or anything. You'll have them at the end of the presentation. But it's an individual who literally writes about $1 billion startup idea every single day that he thinks would be great if somebody built. My First Million is a podcast, and all they do is basically riff on different ideas for companies that they think would work. 3 Things is a newsletter by an individual, by a venture capitalist named Elaine Zelby. And she basically thinks through 3 startup ideas and writes about them and how they would work, and just crowdsources them out. And then finally, the $100 Startup is a book. It's got a bunch of different ideas of startups that you can start for very cheap. So these are individuals who couldn't care less if you took their idea. In fact, they want you to go build their idea. So even if you don't have an idea, there's nothing wrong with repurposing somebody else's idea into your own thing. If you think about like email marketing softwares, there's probably like 30 to 100 thriving email softwares. And there's nothing wrong with making another email software as long as you can figure out a unique value for that software. So that leads us to what is a meaningful problem? How do you figure out whether you should actually build something once you find a problem? And there's 3 main reasons that we see ideas work. The first one is cost. If something costs less, or you can help people generate more revenue, so they make more money. Price related is a huge deal. And that's usually the main reason people are creating solutions. An example for that is like Dollar Shave Club. The next is convenience. So if something is very laborsome or annoying, for example, like going to the store, Amazon can be a solution for that. And then finally, there's this moral thing. We see this a lot with like clean tech, where it isn't necessarily any convenient or more cost effective, but it's good in the moral sense. It's better for the planet. It's better for you. It's better for the community. We're seeing more of a rise of moral products being created. So when you're thinking about what you should build, there's kind of 3 different types of ways you can look at problems. The first and the best way to find a problem is it's something that you want. And this is especially important for B2B, because if you want it and probably other people in your industry want it, that's probably a really good idea, or it's got a high chance of probability that this will work. The other type of problem you can see is something you've directly experienced others needing. So maybe your mother has a certain problem. That's not a problem you know exactly, but you're around it every day. You can see this as a problem. That's another reason you could build a solution to finding a problem. And then the last one, which is generally a little scary for Colabs, or for if you're wanting to build something, is like you've just like sat around and invented something through analytical thought that like, this doesn't exist, it should exist. And I mean, this kind of comes with like electric vehicles or like the internet. Like nobody really sat down one day and was like, hey, it sucks that I can't go on the internet and find anything because the internet didn't exist. So those have the least probability of success, but generally have the largest payoff because they're very difficult solutions to create. So yeah, basically the first type of solution is the least risky, because the fact that you already have this problem, it's very likely that you understand the problem fairly well. And then as you move down the way, you get less risky because you understand the problem less. So what you have to do after you figured out what you're building is you have to figure out why you're building it. A lot of people have personal connections to a problem. So for example, going back to my salon scale example, Alicia noticed just how many salons were failing and how tight margins were and how hard it was to make a profitable business. So her whole mission around creating Salon Scale is to empower more individuals to start salons and ultimately have successful, thriving salons. So you have to just think about, why are you building this in the first place? Because ultimately, things are going to get hard. It is never easy to create a tech product. I've never seen somebody just like create something or have somebody else create something for them and have it thriving right away. It never happens to work like that. And it's just because software is very finicky. It's very personal. It's very easy to switch to other software. So really, if you're thinking about starting a tech company, you need to realize this is going to be like a 5 to 10 year journey. And you have to be really passionate about that problem if you're going to start building it. So then you have to think just not like, why should this exist, but like, why you? What's your angle? We see a lot of unique experience, people from industry who have a better understanding of this problem than pretty much anybody else in the market. But you as an individual, what's your unique aspect to building this? So if you want to build, I don't know, the next Facebook, why are you going to be the person who's going to be successful in building the next Facebook? Are you a better engineer than Mark Zuckerberg? Do you have more talent than Facebook? Do you have more capital than Facebook? Like what is going to be different between you and every other individual trying to solve this problem? And this is really where industry experience or just like a really deep understanding of problem usually sets people apart. But you can also look at different things like, can you out hustle people? Do you as a university student, are you closer to the pulse than most people? That's a really good reason to build something, or really really common reason we see that like people out of university are successful with projects is they have such a close pulse to what is happening in the world, because younger people just seem to get things earlier, that it's actually easier for somebody who's younger and closer to the problem to create a solution around it. And then this all leads to what is your competitive advantage. So as a startup, everything is built around your competitive advantage. Either you're faster, cheaper, better experience, easier to use, whatever that competitive advantage might be. If you don't have one, it is not going to work well. If you have a really strong one, things will probably go well. And then finally, in analyzing problems here, we want to kind of think about like, what is the size of the opportunity? If it's a really small opportunity, it might not be worthwhile to actually go out and take this 5 to 10 year journey to go build it. So if you can look at, the amount of people who are experiencing this problem, the amount they're willing to pay for it, and the frequency, that leads you to the size of the opportunity. So if you look at something like Amazon, number of people who are experiencing not having 2-day delivery is basically everyone on the planet. Dollars they're willing to spend, well, people spend roughly $200 to $300 on consumer items a month. So if you have everybody on the planet times $200 to $300 times monthly, you have a massive opportunity, and that's why we see Amazon as $1 trillion company. So that's one way to look at it. But yeah, if you can analyze these 3 aspects and really have a deep understanding, that'll give you a better understanding of what the size of the opportunity is. And that'll especially help when you're talking to things like venture capitalists or partners or possible co-founders to have a really cool understanding of the market. And that leads us to our next part. So you've gone through your founder mindset, you've started to pick out some ideas. You start thinking, okay, this might be a good idea. I definitely see it. There's a big market. It seems like people really have a problem. What's your next step? The next step is to start talking to people who have that problem. The more you get outside of the workplace and the more you get involved with people who are having this particular problem, the more you can ask them questions, the better understanding you'll have of what you should build. And that'll ultimately save you a bunch of time, a bunch of money, and get you on the right track right away. So when you're asking questions to people, the worst question you can ask is like, hey, if I built this, would you use it? That's generally not a worthwhile question. It skews the whole interview, and it generally gives you a pretty biased view of things. You'll ultimately talk to probably 30 people, and 30 people will say, sure, if you build this, I'll use it. But we really haven't solved anything. So what you want to do is you want to really get deep into what the problem is and understand if your product will solve that problem. So a really good question is like, how do you solve X now? So for example, going back to my salon scale example, how did they solve hair coloring? They just kind of pick a random price, and that's kind of their set price based off length. So that's not a great way to solve that. And then like, why do you bother? So what's the reason that you haven't solved this problem? Is it that it's not actually that large of a problem? It's like something that like I can live with. It's not causing that much pain. And then like, what are the implications? So if you don't solve this problem, will this reduce your profit margin? Will this lead to employee turnover? Will this lead to a bad brand reputation? There's a bunch of different implications. And the more you can understand those implications, the more you can understand what exactly you're building. And then if you can have people walk you through the workflow, or if you can even better watch them go through their workflow, you can understand how they're currently solving the problem. What else have you tried is a great question. It's especially great when they answer and say, oh, I've spent $50 on this product or $100 on this. It means that they're actively trying to solve the problem and actively spending money. So if you're coming in with a solution, it's not new that they have to think, oh, do I actually want to spend money to solve this problem? And then the final question that's always good is like, where does the money come from? Ultimately, you're starting a business to make money, and understanding how that money flows to these decisions is extremely important. So this slide I actually stole from your professor, Tate. I really liked it. He did a presentation on market validation for one of our workshops. So here's like 6 different ways that you can actually do market validation. So I just kind of went through detailed interviews, but there's also observations. So you can watch somebody basically solve their problem. That's like walking through somebody's workflow, seeing them how they work, and starting to pick out different ways and asking questions about what exactly they're doing. There's immersion. So that's doing the thing yourself. So if you want to learn more about how hairstylists do their thing, maybe you can go chop up some people's hair. There's card sorting, which is from those interviews, you're going to basically get a bunch of feedback and you're sorting them into different themes and groups and figuring out what's the common occurrences here. One of my favorite ways is to use a landing page. So what you can do is you can just build a website with a sign up form. So this especially works well with software. So you can build a landing page saying, hey, I built this software. Would you sign up for it? You're not asking people, would they sign up for it? And then if they sign up for it, that's a really good indication that people are actually interested in the software. Then after they sign up, you go, oh, just kidding, I haven't actually made the software yet. But it's a good indication that people are actually interested in what you're building. And then finally is web analytics. You can tell from traffic, people converting. This works also for like social media following. So if you're building something in a problem space, you can create social media accounts before you ever have a product. And you can start seeing whether this is very common occurrence that people are talking about this problem. So the next step. So, okay, so you have your idea, you validated it. What are you doing next? So the next thing you got to do is you got to build a product. So this is where the idea of your minimum viable product comes out. So rather than just creating something that's your full-fledged solution, Amazon didn't start with this massive website with every single product on the planet on it, all these sellers. What they did is just started with books. But maybe you could do it one easier where you don't even need a warehouse full of books. What you can do is you can just create a landing page. And then when somebody buys a book, you can run to chapters and go deliver it. You can go run a Canada Post after and deliver it. What you're trying to see is just like, what's the minimum viable thing that you can build to test? Because what you're trying to do here is you're trying to get the maximum amount of validated learning with the least amount of effort. You're trying to figure out what the core problem is that you're trying to solve and what you think the key hurdle will be. So if it's online shopping, if you're not sure people will, buy books online, what's the easiest thing you can do to test whether people will buy books online? Because all you're trying to figure out is, are people going to buy books online? You're not going to figure out, can I get warehouse space? Warehouse space probably isn't the key problem you're solving. It's figuring out, can you actually create this website and sell these products? So your MVP should be incredibly easy for you to build. Good examples are landing pages, paper mock-ups, things that you can create in a few days or a week, and it's cheap. So the first version, it probably will suck. That's okay. It's not the end of the world if your first product sucks, and it's not a big deal if your first product fails, most likely. If you're in, something complex that has to work, that's another story. But in most situations, what you're creating can fail in the first part, and that's okay. But what you're trying to figure out is, can you solve this problem? Get as much learnings out of this MVP as possible, and then just don't fall in love with your MVP. Don't fall in love with your solution, don't fall in love with your solution, fall in love with your problem, and just keep trying to figure out on that problem and learn on that problem. So some tips with products. Your friends and family are amazing, and I'm sure they have great ideas, but make something that 10 people love, 10 people are willing to pay for, 10 people think that are really great. Don't build something for everyone, and don't just rely on your friends and family's feedback. Really figure out who has this problem and figure out will people pay you for this solution. So next steps after that, a big one is co-founders. A lot of times one person will have a great idea, but ultimately teams that have co-founders just tend to do better. It's one of those things when you can marry someone with business skills, someone with tech skills, and then maybe somebody who's a little bit of a hustler as well. Those teams tend to work really well. It's not impossible to be a solo founder, but definitely if you can marry somebody with really strong technical skills and somebody with really strong business skills, those do great. We do see sometimes with engineering teams, they're great at building a product, but then at the end of the day, they haven't really thought about too much how are they going to sell it, and that becomes a huge issue as well. So maybe you move past co-founders. What's next? Okay, you need to hire somebody. So with that, what you want to look for is areas that you really don't have any expertise in. It's going to be a core function of your business. With that, you're going to then look to hire. Hiring always gets a little difficult, but there's a few tests we have here. One is called the airplane test. This is, would you want to sit beside this person for a 3-hour flight? Do you guys get along really well? Because you're going to spend a whole bunch of time together. So I really hope you enjoy working with each other, because if you don't, that's going to be a really odd relationship when you're spending 5 to 10 years together and 40 hours a week. It's going to be really exhausting. Next, are they coachable and motivated? Startups are changing all the time. You're not really sure exactly what you're building. Everything's a little bit crazy. So, are they going to be willing to learn? Are they going to be able to validate what they're working on? And ultimately, can they do the job is the last part. You can hire your best friend and you guys get along well, and they might be coachable, but at the end of the day, you need to move extremely quickly, and having dead weight just isn't an option in the early stage of startups. So your next step, capital. Everybody loves capital. Everybody wants a bag of money. It seems to be great. But if we're looking at like, when you're going to raise, who are you going to raise it from? How are you going to raise? These are questions you have to answer. In this province, generally, nobody gets funding without revenue, unless it's government funding, or maybe you work on like an extremely technical product and you have pretty good validation around it. But really, venture capitalists and angel investors want to see revenue generating businesses. And the whole idea around capital is that that if you're injecting that capital in, that you can really fuel your growth. So if you're adding 200 grand, you're able to spend 100 grand on marketing, and that 100 grand on marketing is going to return 400K. That's when you look at, okay, this makes a ton of sense to be a venture capital based business, because we know we can accelerate growth really quickly. And that's where, having a smaller piece of a pie, but a way larger pie ends up making sense. And then who to raise from. So there's a couple of options here. The government is great. We love government funding. There's programs like IRAP and SHRED, IRAP is basically a wage subsidy. So for your technical talent, you can get like up to 80% of those wages paid. SHRED is a tax credit, so I think you can get up to like 45% back for your employees. You have your family and friends. These are great options, fools as well, I guess, who are willing to give you money. A lot of university-based businesses are probably invested in by family and friends. Then you have your venture capital. This is a little bit, you're more down the road. You have a bit more success going on. That's when you can look at VC money. And then, yeah, there's tons of options with free money. This is generally related to government grants. Huge opportunity and is definitely neglected a little bit. So how to raise, there's really three main components to any pitch here. I got a little bit of time left. I'm almost done, don't worry. So with pitching, pitching is just difficult. Like these things are never easy. You're literally asking somebody to give you money to go build this thing that you barely even started. You don't have a crazy amount of traction. You're just a university student. This gets very difficult. But the more that you have a good connection with the individual that you're pitching to, that's why it's great to raise money from families, because they generally trust you, because they've been exposed to you for quite a long time. But the more you can create connections, sometimes you're not even raising at that moment, but the more you can meet people, have conversations, show them what you're doing, that's when having that connection works. And really gotta hone your pitch. Like for example, with Colaunch, we do, I think, 4 or 5 pitches before they actually get to the finale. Honing those pitches is just something that's pretty difficult, but the more you can cut out unnecessary stuff, add in the necessary stuff, and have a really smooth pitch, those are the ones that stand out. Those are businesses that get funded. So my parting thoughts, love your customer and your problem more than you love the idea of making a bunch of money or being rich and being famous. The first part of being a great founder is all about loving your customer, loving your problem. Be iterative, experiment and fail. Everything is going to be changing all the time. It's a bit of a crazy journey. Always be throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And ultimately, a bunch of things you're going to do are going to fail, and that's okay. And if nothing you're doing is failing, that's generally not a great sign. It generally means you aren't trying enough crazy stuff. And then be purposeful. So whatever you're doing, just make sure you're enjoying it, but also that like it's something you want to do for a long time, because if you're successful, you're just generally going to have to continue to do this for longer and longer. So a little bit more on Colabs and what we have going on. So Colaunch is a program that's 16 weeks. It's all about the fundamentals of building a tech company. This is for basically people who have ideas, maybe up to MVPs. We've had a couple actually capstone projects get into Colaunch. So yeah, with this is a great opportunity to take you from the early stages of building a product to hopefully getting closer to generating revenue. So if you are currently building something, please let me know. Really happy to look at your application or help you with your application. I'll drop it a link in the chat right away. And then also we have CoLearn going on. CoLearn is our summit on the fundamentals of tech startups. So that's on January 26th. It's running from 1 to 5 p.m. with some networking in there. And we have 4 founders and 2 investors talking about their journeys through tech, giving you some ideas on how to start businesses, how to validate your idea. And then we have 2 investors finishing it off, telling you about how they look at giving out money. So I have resources here as well. So I talked a little bit about all of these. If you want to check them out more, especially I recommend like the Y Combinator library if you're interested in this subject at all. Y Combinator is like the best accelerator in the world. And they basically open source all their content and give it all away. So definitely if you're interested in this, check it out. They have a ton of videos. And if you're ever interested in anything Colabs, we have our website. We're actually right on Innovation Place, so we're not too far. And we have a group email. It's hello@Colabs. My email is just Dallas@Colabs. Feel free to email me with anything. So that's all I got. Any questions? I'll just drop the 2 links here. Colaunch is an application, so that takes a bit longer, but CoLearn is just a really simple sign-up form. Takes only a few seconds to finish that if you want to attend that.
Thanks, Dallas. Any questions from our students?
Tate, you got any questions?
Well, I think like one thing like I wonder this goes not related to Colaunch, but I know that as companies raising funds, there's always a big question is like who are they going to hire? So if our students don't necessarily want to take the risk to actually start a business, or maybe it's not the right time yet, how can they get involved? Otherwise.
Yeah, so I'd say Collabs is a great place for that as well. So for example, like the Co-Learn Summit, we were in two a year. This one's all about becoming a founder, but we also hold one all about becoming an employee at tech companies as well. That one's in the fall. And then community events. I mean, we're always running different events and stuff. It's great networking opportunities, great to meet other people in the community. And ultimately, all these founders are kind of always hiring, whether that be engineering talent or like computer science talent or sales talent or whatever. And, you know, there are a number of hardware related startups here as well. So kind of does fit in with engineering. So you can also just do some research on our website. We list all of the companies we work with. They have all their links to their websites and LinkedIn. A lot of those companies are hiring, especially the hardware based ones right now. So if you are interested in that, I would just go to their websites, do a little bit of research on them. And most of them are pretty open to meeting with young people who are interested in the sector. So it's usually easy enough just to reach out and ask for half an hour for a coffee.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think like one of the benefits of working with a startup company is actually, especially if the company is growing really fast, you guys actually promote it really quickly, sooner than working with an established business. We will have one of our alumni from last year coming back to talk about the career progression. He's working with River City right now. I think he's get promoted a lot faster if he was working with a traditional, more established business.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And
go ahead.
you,
Yeah.
you get to be a lot of like more hands-on with these things. Like they're such in early stages that like you can really take on a lot of different projects, a lot of different things that you're interested in. And ultimately, if you can create a compelling business case for creating something, they're pretty much all ears on people taking initiative in a startup. There's not a lot of red tape around things.
Yeah. One other thing is I know a lot of you might have concern about professional engineer designation. So if you do need to obtain that, Apex, the professional body, actually has pathway for people working with startup companies, even if they don't necessarily have a professional engineer themselves, as long as you have a mentor to pair it with you, that will be possible as well. So explore those pathways, and ultimately, I think like once you build a career, like you got to have some fun, go to the area you really enjoy it, and I think that's quite important. I I know some of you are like wanting to apply for Colaunch potentially. Are there any questions from those students?
Yeah, if you're thinking of applying, I would definitely ask me questions. I do have a little bit of pull with these things, so. Yeah, maybe I can just give like some slight advice on this. So yeah, we do have an application. It doesn't take a crazy amount of time, but definitely I would email it on over to me before you submit it. I like to review all the applications kind of before they're done. I can always provide feedback on your application and make sure it's a little bit better. But yeah, with this, like we have seen quite a few capstone projects get in. So we're always looking for, you know, engineering talent, especially computer science related projects. There's just kind of a lack of technical talent in the province. So anybody who's working on something that's generally fairly technical, we really like to see those projects. So if you are kind of working on a capstone project that you think might be a good fit, would definitely recommend applying.
What are some key metrics you're looking at?
Yeah, with that, so the big thing we look at is team kind of over everything. Almost every year we have, a team come in that looks like a great team on paper. They come in with an idea that they think is good. The idea ends up not being good. And then that kind of works to what's the next thing. And we've actually seen quite a few teams come in with one idea, it doesn't work out, and then come out with something completely different, and end up doing fairly well. So with that, like we're always looking for, is there technical talent to build a solution? Do you have past entrepreneurial experiences? Also great. Are you just somebody who's going to hustle and grind these things out? Because that's ultimately what we look at. What we look at is like most important. Then a little bit on the idea, but we don't dive too much into the idea. First of all, do we think it's a feasible idea is always pretty important, but we always try and have we have like a selection committee of like 5 different people, so we get people kind of from all walks of life who are fairly interested in these things, and can kind of give a perspective on this. And then we always just look at like, is the business viable? Is the market large enough? Is this something that we can see, actually being a thriving business? So those are kind of the 3 main things that we look at.
Okay, I got a question from YouTube. There's a question about, can we attend Colaunch again with a new idea, like if they had attended it before?
There's no rule against it. So yeah, if you have a new idea, and you'd already gone through Colaunch, yes, you can go through it again. But the idea better be banging then.
Yeah. I think like the key is really get the customer and markets going, and in this space there is ultimately a lot of opinion, like you can go like with analytical. I know in university we tend to get into too much in analytical, but you can debate that to the end of the day. The ultimate judge will be the customer and market. So if you can get traction and people are really excited and willing to pay for it, you're on the right track. Otherwise, there can be a lot of debate, but ultimately it doesn't really count much.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, traction is the ultimate way to stand out. In fact, in the last 2 years, 2 cohorts, each one had a company that made it to the final and into CoLink that I didn't think was a very good idea, but at the end of the day, they had revenue. So ultimately, we care a lot more about customers' perspectives than our own perspectives. So if you have paying customers, it's a great sign.
Yeah. Okay. Last chance for questions from our audience.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks so much for having me today. Would love to see some of you out at CoLearn, the founder summit there. And then also, yeah, if you are working on something, please let me know. I would love to see a Colaunch application from you as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you, Dallas, for joining in. I think this is the first time, like in the last 2 years, I don't have my thank you card. I flash at you. So thank you very much for all your support, and we look forward to have some students to go into either the employee summit or the founder summit. I emphasize that I know some of you are graduating and potentially looking for jobs. So do look at the Colabs. That's a one-stop shop. You can kind of get into a lot of the quite innovative companies. Go from there. And next week we'll have our speaker Omar Nawara. So he graduated just a couple of years ago and working as an environmental engineer on the project management side. So for those of you who are interested in exploring a career in project management and especially in more traditional engineering venues, that's the speaker you definitely want to join in. We'll still be on Zoom, same time. Before I let you go, 495 students, make sure you book a meeting with me next week. And otherwise, we'll have a good evening and stay warm, stay safe, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Dallas, for coming again.
How's it going?